Starting with you, Ben, do you think Larson makes a good point about this being a bad look for NASCAR, which puts an emphasis on entertainment over sport? Also, should NASCAR create a new rule to prevent such a move in the future?
It might be within the bounds of the rule book today, but I don't know if it's going to be within the bounds of the rule book in 2023. I've seen some people make some comparisons to the T-Rex car that Jeff Gordon brought in one time, and with Ray and Evernham and everything, and they basically said, look, that was impressive. That car is fantastic. Never bring that back here again. I've got a feeling they might be having some conversations like that later this week, despite what they're saying today. I think they have to come out and say something like that because people are going to be wondering. I mean, if you ever see a speed discrepancy like that, 2 full seconds in Martinsville, what is that in comparison at an F1 track where it takes a minute and 30 seconds? That would be like an 8 or 10 second gap from the fastest time to the second fastest. I mean, there would be a track limits violation. They would obviously throw that lap out. I almost feel like this is a track limits violation. Nobody would think to do that if it weren't the last lap of the race and you could coast to the finish line coming off of 4 and it didn't matter. I mean, there are so many different angles to hit here. I want to be careful and make sure we get all of them. But I saw a tweet and a thread here that I think brought up a lot of good points. And this is something I really want to highlight. There is a gate there at turn 4 coming off of where Ross Chastain rode that wall. You can see photographers out here, people close to the fence whose job it is. I mean, it's not like these are fans who are, just mindlessly, aimlessly walking close to a racing surface and to the catch fence. You see people in the orange vests there. It's their job to capture those images and be that close. And there's a gate there. If that gate does not hold that 3,400-pound stock car going wide open right up against the fence, if that gate pulls a Mike Harmon 2002 or Michael Waltrip 1990 kind of failure at Bristol, we got a lawsuit on our hands. We've got something potentially much worse than a lawsuit on our hands there. So I think that's something that can't get lost in all of this. Like that was a dangerous move. And again, I want to be very clear. More power to Ross Chastain. That's what the system forces these drivers to do. It forces them to make crazy moves like that. We saw it in the Xfinity race yesterday with Ty Gibbs. And, I'm sure, Kobe and I, we're going to talk a lot about that on Encore tomorrow, I'm sure. But that's the culture that has been created in this sport to the point where even if Ty Gibbs is locked in, we're used to seeing moves like that. He knows as unpopular as it's going to be, he can get away with it if he's okay with the backlash that comes with it. In this particular case here, obviously it's a different situation, but in my mind, that's still an intentional wreck. Now it's an intentional wreck of yourself, but it's still intentionally damaging your car in order to advance into the next round. Is that not by definition an intentional wreck to advance to the next round? I think it is. And I think that doesn't even get into the whole can of worms that you've opened up here. We've seen clearly the laws of physics allow that now. I mean, I still can't believe when you look at that in real time. I mean, it looks like a video game. It looks like it's sped up. It looks edited, but it's not. We have the lap times. We have the data to show and improve it. Michael Tiller here saying, if you can pull that off in a video game, good. To do it in real life, wow, maybe stupid, but he pulled it off and kept it. More power to Chastain. And I totally agree with that. But at the same time, I just don't know what precedent this sets going forward. We were talking before we came on the show here. Imagine, let's say, I'm trying to think of a good example because we don't usually see more than 4 open cars show up in the Cup Series anymore. But let's say Junior Motorsports brings their 5th car out for, a Cup driver, whoever it is, at some point next season. They don't have the owner's points to fall back on. They come to Martinsville. They need to qualify on time. Junior Motorsports clearly has the budget to go to a backup car. So what would be stopping their driver from just riding the wall, just as Ross Chastain did today in turns 3 and 4, to make sure that they have a lap time that's fast enough to get in the field? And then they maybe have to go to a backup car, but they have the budget to do that. They have the resources to start last and work their way up through the field. I mean, at least they'll be in the race. They'll guarantee that. What's going to stop them from doing that? So I just think, again, as cool as it looks, as cool as the visuals are, as cool as it might be to see people who aren't usually talking about NASCAR talking about it, I'm concerned that in the long run, this might not be a very good thing for the sport at all. And this might be something where people take a look at this and say, well, if that's allowed, I mean, where's the legitimacy in that? In damaging your car and pulling a video game style move and having it work, and the system allowing that, and in some ways, again, forcing Ross Chastain to do that. It's just a very, very messy situation. And I'm curious to see once everything calms down here, because in the moment, I think we were all just speechless. We all couldn't believe what we saw. We all thought it was incredibly impressive, and it was, but it was also incredibly risky. And I think in a lot of ways, as we saw in that tweet, incredibly dangerous. And thank the good Lord that that gate held up. But if it hadn't, we'd be having a very different conversation with a very different tone right now. And I think that's worth bringing into the conversation because we can't just ignore that, particularly with the safety concerns. I know we're going to get into Tyler Reddick here in a little bit, but who's to say Ross Chastain couldn't have given himself a concussion by doing that? I mean, there's so many different layers that, again, as cool as it looks, we have to keep in mind here. Hey everyone, I'm Ben Schneider. Thank you so much for watching. Before you go, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel for more Grid Network highlights and analysis. And for full episodes of Grid Live Encore and other Grid programming, subscribe directly to Grid Network.